Hello everyone. Today I welcome all of you to the next video of our YouTube channel, and this is the 10th video. In the previous video we discussed about the relationship between the absolute and the relative. And in today's video our topic is more of a popular one, which is about the dark night of the soul of a bodhisattva. Well, I think in Western spirituality as well as in Eastern spirituality, we often we have talked about the dark night of the soul in many occasions. Even if you go back to the history of, let's say, several thousands of years, all the spiritual masters who walk upon the walk on this planet, dedicating themselves to uplift the human consciousness, well, they all had to go through this the dark night of the soul. Well, in fact, many people nowadays who are following spirituality, let's say, be it through meditation, be it from chakra activation, and be it from, let's say, doing yoga or doing intuitive communication, or even some people who do these tarot card readings, they all have to go through this difficult period of time. So, in this way, the dark night of the soul period, the difficulties that you have to encounter, they can also take many different shapes. They can come in many different intensities. However, our topic, in today's video topic, we are discussing about the dark night of the soul, specific to the Bodhisattva path. So, if you have watched in our previous videos of our YouTube channel, you would have noticed that we have been uh, speaking about continuously on this Bodhisattva path, where most of the practitioners are making their own path. They are uncovering their own path, not only for themselves but also for others. So the examples can be, the paths that were uncovered by, let's say, our true spiritual masters like Jesus Christ, Gautama the Buddha, and even Prophet Muhammad. So there are all these, these are all genuine spiritual gurus who are coming from both Eastern and Western spiritual traditions. And in fact, they follow this specific path called the Bodhisattva path. And they try to find and aspire for the highest truth, uncover the highest truth, not only for themselves but also for the benefit of others. However, the Bodhisattva path, as I mentioned in one of my previous videos, we cannot forcefully work on that path. It is something that is actually decided by Mother Nature or the universe to bestow upon the spiritual practitioner, depending on his her capacity and depending on their intellectual capacity and also the dedication towards awakening others. So what is so specific and what is so important about the dark night of the soul period of the Bodhisattva path? This is what we are looking at in this video. Well, if you recall, the Bodhisattva path stages that I had mentioned in our very first video of the channel, I clearly mentioned that the trajectory of the Bodhisattva, it can span across many stages. So depending on your basic understanding, your fundamentals, first you will have glimpses of what the true nature of your mind, and it may appear to you as, let's say, a very blissful meditative experience, or some epiphanies that came to you, let's say through your dreams, and also as a meditative experience or as a meditative sign. So this is the stepping stone to the trajectory. However, the way you progress through the Bodhisattva path, it depends on many other factors. So for an example, as I mentioned, the primary goal of the Bodhisattva path is to help others, to bring other people into enlightenment. So that means that you should not keep your light to yourself, but also you have to share it with others. And as you can see in this video, so this is how the Bodhisattva path trajectory looks like. And as you can see, in the first couple of stages, you will have the basic understanding of, let's say if you are coming from the Buddhist background, you will have the basic understanding of certain factors or certain religious ideas like impermanence, and then the nature of mind, the nature of reality, emptiness, and the root cause of suffering. So you will have this basic understanding. And when you progress along, and let's say when you come to the fourth stage of the Bodhisattva path, at this stage you have to go through a special kind of training. And this special kind of training can be perhaps initiated by certain universal forces. Well, you can ascribe it to the Almighty God, you can ascribe it to let's say certain spiritual guides, and you can even ascribe it to certain ancestors that to help you to evolve in your spiritual trajectory. So after these initiations, at certain point of your trajectory, you will come to experience and you have to go through certain difficulties. And these difficulties can emerge from, as body pains, as suffering, and they might also appear as, let's say, outward manifestations of your inner struggles, outward manifestations of your the five poisons in your mind, and sometimes they can also appear as certain demonic figures, or in certain wrathful forms to like torment you. So all these troubles usually we encounter, they are part of this natural evolutionary process. They are part of this human evolution. So what is the point and what is the meaning of going through these difficulties? To strengthen your soul, to elevate you to a higher consciousness, to elevate you to a higher dimension. And at the same time, this training system, or the, let's say, Mother Nature or the universe, also has to train you to become a strong soul, a strong adept with this universal initiation. So that is the main purpose of incurring or inducing pain and suffering to the practitioner. However, when you evolve through this path, you will also get yourself trained to embrace them, to accept the pain, so that it will be a learning curve for you. Well, that was about the basic information related to this topic. And let's dive into more details. And let's see how this dark night of the soul period is related to our karma and the purpose behind creating or introducing a dark night of the soul to the practitioner. Well, we all know that in order to evolve, through our spiritual process, in order to go through our spiritual evolution, we have to go from a lower level of consciousness or lower level of energetical realization or awakening to a higher level energetical realization. So, end of the day, through this evolution, what happens to us is we get certain energy centers in our body activated, and as a result, this energy has to be dissipated in us. And this energy dissipation can be called or can be referred to as karma or the karmic energy in more religious sense. I mean, in most of like, let's say, Western spiritual practices, people used to say that if something bad happens to them, they used to ascribe it to karma. So people usually say that, okay, it's my bad karma. The karma is big. So likewise, people have different kind of ideas and concepts around the topic called karma. However, everything happens to us cannot be related to karma. But coming back to our topic, usually in this spiritual evolutionary process, if you are an ambitious starseed, if you are destined to reach the highest truth, if you are also destined to become a bodhisattva who is bringing the highest truth to other people, who is making your own path, opening your own path for other people, then this spiritual evolutionary process will accelerate. It can be accelerated with the help of a guru, or sometimes a higher power, Almighty God, or high level universal gurus can also involve into this process, and you can be your spiritual evolution can be accelerated in that way. Now we know that there are certain institutes and certain universal entities, for an example like Galactic Federation, who are actively helping star seeds or people who are interested in spirituality to accelerate their evolutionary process. As long as we are sincere to our practice, as long as we are sticking with our higher purpose, then there's a high chance that we can quickly go through this process. But as a result, you also have to face the difficulties in life, and they may appear to you as a dark night of the soul. So here, the question is, at which point the dark night of the soul appears? It may happen for different people in different ways, at different milestones. And sometimes when the trajectories are different, the dark night of the soul experience can, take different shapes. But if you are following the Bodhisattva path, as I mentioned, aspiring for the highest truth, then of course the intensity of the dark night of the soul will be higher than the normal disciple path. So let's say, for an example, your initial stepping stone to the Bodhisattva path is, let's say, a lower level chakra activation or an opening of the lower level of your chakra. Let's say it's fourth and fifth chakra. And now you are seeing meditative lights or certain dream visions or certain meditative concentrations. You're experiencing them throughout the day. But still, at the level of, let's say, the fourth and fifth chakras, they still have mundane qualities, and because of that reason you cannot fully dedicate yourself for the spirituality, because you are still involved with the worldly desires and worldly activities. But then if you are not doing anything at all, if you are not taking any help from any guru, if you don't have any kind of initiation from a lineage, then it may take several number of years to come to the next level. So for an example, for me, it took about 17 years from my initial awakening, the initial awakening of lower chakras, to reach to the third eye chakra opening. So likewise, for another person, perhaps it might take, let's say, only 2-3 years. However, one thing I can really stress here is that if you evolve through the natural evolutionary process, instead of forcefully trying to activate your chakras, then the activation or the fruit of activating your chakra, or the blessing that you receive by opening your chakras in that way, will be more beneficial, will last forever, rather than trying to forcefully activate them. Even the forceful activation of chakra is not recommended. Why? Because as I mentioned, you need to spend, or you need to dissipate a certain karmic energy to move from a lower level of chakra to a higher level. And the dissipation of this karmic energy has to happen gradually. And if it is going to happen in a very short time, then of course you will end up having unexpected consequences. So that's why we never recommend to forcefully activate chakras or forcefully go into any kind of higher meditative states. So likewise, the adverse effects that you are encountering through the dark night of the soul is directly related to your karma, or the karmic energy. And it's also important to note one more thing. The purification of our mind is different to the energetical evolution. Remember that. So if you are coming from, let's say, the Buddhist background, then it is needless to mention about the so-called vipassana practice, because the whole purpose of the vipassana practice is to purify our mind, to clean our mind from mental fetters or the mental defilements. That cleaning process, cleansing of the mental fetters, is totally different to the energetical evolution. And therefore remember that the influence or the impact of the karmic energy dissipation through this mental purification is far less, or having very low intensity, compared to the karmic dissipation energy when you are evolving through your energy system. So these are two different things. Okay, so you need to have a clear distinction between these two. And there's another important thing I would like to mention here. Now, as I told you before, the lower chakras in our body, let's say starting from the first lower chakra, in Indian tradition we call it Muladhara, or the root chakra, and from root chakra to the fourth chakra, or the heart chakra, so they have worldly qualities, they have mundane qualities. So when you move from the root chakra to the heart chakra, the karmic dissipation, the karmic energy dissipation is not that significant. And for this worldly journey, it won't be that difficult. It won't be as difficult as when you move from the fourth chakra to the higher chakras. And for the latter, let's say you are moving from the heart chakra to seventh or the crown chakra, then the karmic energy dissipation that you have to bear can be really significant. And then if you want to give very specific information and interesting information related to this, the karmic energy dissipation is where you evolve from the 6th to 7th chakra. Now most people, well, usually, for the sake of simplicity, for the sake of basic studies, we usually reduce the number of chakras in our body to 7 so that the analysis is easier. But then remember, between 6th chakra to 7th chakras, there are many important milestones. There are many important intermediate chakras. And these chakras are so important for our evolution. Why? Because most of the very subtle meditative considerations are emerging from these intermediate chakras. So for an example, from the 6th chakra to 7th chakra, there's a center called nirvanic chakra, and there's another center called guru chakra. In addition to that, there's another one called lalana chakra. So from these intermediate chakras and many other small minor chakras of fine granularity, you will have many subtle mental concentrations. You can arrive to many subtle meditative samadhis. And in Hindu tradition, these meditative samadhis are usually referred to as savikalpa to nirvikalpa samadhi. In Buddhist tradition, we usually refer to them as form and formless absorptions. And therefore remember that moving from the 6th center to 7th energy center is also challenging. It requires a significant amount of karmic energy release. And because of that reason, this evolutionary trajectory, only this part, 6 to 7 jump, has perhaps brings you the difficulties of the highest intensity. Even if you read, let's say certain religious texts where many ancient spiritual teachers had mentioned about their awakening. So these are the energy centers. Usually they have to also they went through this dark night of the soul period. And especially when you are moving from the 6th to 7th chakra, 6 to 7 centers, you are, well, most of the time tapping into the unconscious layer of your mind or deep untouched areas, unknown terrains in your consciousness. So you could say that you could relate this to, let's say, the unconscious, the dark corners of your consciousness. And cleansing and bringing the energy into these dark corners usually will be reflected as inner demons. And sometimes they can be also appearing to you as outward manifestations. Usually the yogis or the meditators who are very close to the awakening of the energy centers between 6 to 7, they usually encounter many different physical and bodily sensations during the sleep and also during the meditation. they usually encounter them. Sometimes you feel like, a person from higher dimension comes to you and tapping your body. Sometimes you may feel, let's say, a demonic figure is dwelling in your physical body. So likewise, you may encounter many different experiences. However, you should also maintain a certain amount of equanimity and also compassion during these experiences, and also for these outward manifestations. Because when you go through this experience, it may appear really real to you, even though they are illusory. But in the middle of that experience, we don't know that. In the middle of that experience, simply like we are, it almost, it is felt like we are fighting against the darkness. It is almost felt like we are fighting against these demons. So you have two options. Either you continue fighting, or you have sympathy, compassion towards them, or you look at everything, observe everything, or witness everything with equanimity. Yeah, so that's how we relate the dark night of the soul experiences to certain chakras. So to conclude, to conclude the information related to the chakra awakening, usually the karmic energy that you have to dissipate from moving from, let's say, the fourth chakra to seventh chakra, it will be really significant. And due to that reason, the dark night of the soul period that you are going through from fourth to seventh chakras is really, it has a significant impact onto your practice. And then how do we relate the dark night of the soul to our consciousness? Well, as we discussed many times, our consciousness is um, directly related to our energy system. In many of our previous videos, I clearly explained that the region between the sixth and the seventh chakras is defining the consciousness, human consciousness. The human consciousness is operating between sixth and seventh chakras. And mainly because of this reason, where this evolutionary process takes place, we are getting exposed, or your awareness, human awareness, is getting exposed to the deep corners of our mind, or the so-called unconscious layer. I mean, not only in Eastern spirituality, but also people from the Western tradition, like even Carl Jung, in many occasions had mentioned about the traits of the unconscious layer. So you will, of course, encounter them during this evolutionary process. Another important information that I want to highlight based on my own experience is how the activation of certain chakras, depending on their attributes, have a different quality to the dark night of the soul. So mainly when you have this the lower level chakra activation, of the activation of the chakras starting from the root chakra to the third chakra, then most of the time the things you encounter in your dreams and also in your meditation, they are related to, let's say, the worldly things. So for an example, there could be, many demonic visions related to your sexual energy appearing in your visions, or even like you would, go through certain emotional pains in your day-to-day life. However, when you surpass this level and when you come to the sixth and seventh chakras, then you would have the direct connection to the higher source or the universal source or God. And then after that, um, the dark night of the soul period you encounter has a different quality. So in this period, um, perhaps you would go through, let's say, a certain kind of death experience. Sometimes during your sleep, you would feel like somebody is coming to, snatch your soul and take out your soul from the top of your head. Because this evolutionary process wants you to train yourself, train you in this, so-called this death process, because, that's one of the deepest fear we have. So, for an example, in spirituality, we say that if someone can transcend the fear for death, he will be free from all the fears. So, this universal evolutionary process wants to train people into that. So, when you have this higher chakra activation, you would perhaps encounter this type of experience. And of course, uh, it will be accompanied by, let's say, fear, anxieties, and you won't be able to sleep alone at home. So after this happens on one day, then the next consecutive days can be sleepless for you. So in such a situation, it's good to like take advice from somebody who has gone through this evolutionary process. Or you can also like read and refer to certain materials like this video that I have published. Well, um, there are a couple of more examples I would like to share with you. Um, During this period, sometimes certain defilements in our mind, or we call them five poisons in Buddhist tradition. Sometimes this evolutionary process would also test whether you are really immune to these five poisons by showing you different visions, or even like bringing you certain, let's say, illusory physical effects to your body, physical sensation to your body. So for an example, to check your jealousy, perhaps you would see a vision that one of your close friend is like in falling in love with your wife. Or maybe there could be a situation that a girl who you like most is perhaps spending a great time, a quality time with another person, perhaps with your arch enemy. So these are just mere visions, and they don't have any substance or any real value to them. And likewise, many such visions or body sensations related to them will appear to the surface, will happen consecutively in your life during this period. But it is just to test your immunity, and also to cleanse your energy system, and also to bring light, more and more light to your consciousness. And you need to get used to that, and that's how you transcend difficulties or face difficulties with dignity during the dark night of the soul. And with that information, I conclude my video.